Imagine being in the NBA and refusing to shoot the ball. Not because you couldn't, but because you didn't have to. Imagine grabbing 28 boards and a few games later having 10 blocks. That's right, 10. This is the story of Ben Wallace. He didn't need a silky jumper, didn't need a Kareem skyhook, didn't even need to hit his free throws, which is good because, spoiler alert, he didn't. Ben Wallace was different. A defensive maniac, a rebounding lunatic, a human brick wall with a throw, and somehow, someway, he became the only undrafted player in NBA history to make the Hall of Fame. So how in the hell did he transform the game so drastically all through defense alone? We have to go back to September 10, 1974 in Whitehall, Alabama, a small town where he was born. And when I say small town, I mean, if you blink while driving through it, congratulations, you've just passed Whitehall. One stoplight, that's it. Population? Probably just his family. Speaking of which, Ben was the 10th of 11 kids. 11! Can you imagine fighting for food at dinner? Or trying to get a turn on the TV? Or literally getting any personal space? Forget the NBA paint. Ben learned toughness in his living room. In high school, he played baseball, football, and basketball. He wasn't a prized recruit out of high school. Sure, he was tough, athletic, competitive, but raw. No one looked at him and thought, yeah, future NBA Hall of Famer right there. So he did what overlooked guys do. He took the long road. Started at Cuyahoga Community College in Ohio, yeah, the place your uncle might have taken 9 classes in accounting. Then he transferred to Virginia Union, a Division II school. Tiny gym, tiny crowds, but huge heart. Ben didn't put up monster scoring numbers in college either. No 30-point games, no droves of scouts. He averaged just 13 points per game. But you know what he did average? Boards, blocks, hustle plays, diving for loose balls, stuff that didn't even show up in the box score. He didn't dream of being the next Michael Jordan. He dreamed of being the next Dennis Rodman. Fast forward to 1996 NBA draft, a legendary class. Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, Steve Nash, Ray Allen. Meanwhile, Ben Wallace was at home, probably sitting on the couch, phone not ringing. Undrafted. 0 teams called his name. 0 teams thought he was worth a pick. But he didn't give up. Eventually, he got a shot. Signed as an undrafted free agent with the Washington Bullets. But let's be real, no one expected anything. Maybe he'd hustle off the bench, maybe he'd give some hard fouls, maybe he'd get waived. That's how it usually goes for undrafted guys. He spent 3 seasons there. Limited minutes, barely touched the ball on offense. His stat lines looked like 0 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 4 fouls. Then he went to Orlando. Same story. Defensive energy, no spotlight. He was like a ghost on offense. People literally forgot he was on the floor until he swatted their layup into the 5th row. But then, destiny called. He got traded to Detroit for Grant Hill. And that's where everything changed. Detroit was a perfect place for Ben Wallace. A blue-collar, hard-hat, lunch-pail city that respected grit way more than flash. And Ben? He was basically the living embodiment of Detroit. He showed up with that massive afro, bulging biceps, scowl on his face, and instantly became the heartbeat of the Pistons. From 2001 to 2006, Ben Wallace turned into an absolute defensive terror. Think about this. He was 6'8", maybe 240 pounds soaking wet, and he regularly guarded Shaquille O'Neal. Successfully. That's like an angry bulldog deciding it was gonna stop a rampaging elephant, and somehow pulling it off. He didn't just block shots, he launched them, sent them into orbit like SpaceX. Fans in the 10th row were taking home souvenirs every night. The stats back it up. During that stretch, Ben averaged about 12 rebounds, 2.5 blocks, and 1.5 steals per game. In 2001-02, he put up an insane 13 rebounds and 3.5 blocks per night, leading the league in both categories. He also led the league in total rebounds again in 2002-03 and finished top 5 in blocks nearly every year. He was a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, tied with Dikembe Mutombo for the most ever. More than Rodman, more than Dwight Howard, more than Rudy Gobert. Then came 2004. The Pistons didn't have a Kobe, didn't have a Shaq, didn't have a Tim Duncan, but they did have a Ben Wallace. And with Ben Wallace and his defense anchoring them, they beat the heavily favored Lakers. Shaq, Kobe, Karl Malone, Gary Payton, the entire NBA marketing machine, and shocked the world to win the NBA title. Ben didn't need to score. He just needed to make sure you didn't. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Ben Wallace couldn't score to save his life. His career average? 5.7 points per game. That's like 2 layups and a free throw, maybe. His free throw percentage was under 42%. Hack-a-Ben was practically the Pistons' alternate offense. Sometimes you'd see teammates dump the ball down to him in the post, and he'd look around confused like, "Why did you do this to me? I thought we were friends." He'd literally catch it, and then just toss it back out like, "You guys handle this scoring stuff. I'll just wait under the basket." And yet, none of it mattered, because his entire value was built on something way rarer than scoring. It was built on sacrifice, on doing the dirty work, on making everyone else's life easier. While the league was obsessed with highlight dunks and deep threes, Ben was obsessed with ruining highlight dunks and contesting those deep threes. He flipped the narrative. He showed that a game isn't just about how many points you score, it's also about how many points you prevent. Off the court, Ben Wallace was almost unrecognizable from the fierce, growling beast he was between the lines. There were no menacing scowls, no roaring flexes, no death stares that made point guards reconsider driving to the hoop. Instead, there was a calm, quiet man. Humble, family first, the kind of guy who probably laughed hardest at dad jokes and cherished a peaceful night on the couch over any glamorous party. Growing up, Ben idolized Dennis Rodman. It made perfect sense. He admired Rodman's relentless pursuit of rebounds, his tenacity on defense, and the way he could flip a game on its head without scoring a single point. You could see bits of Rodman in Ben's game. The tattoos, the fearless dives into the crowd, the way he'd wrestle 3 guys for 1 loose ball like it was the last slice of pizza at home. But that's where the similarities ended. Because while Rodman was out in Vegas between playoff games, wearing wedding dresses and turning every press conference into a circus, Ben Wallace was, well, probably at home building Legos with his kids. There were no scandalous headlines, no outrageous tabloid stories. The most controversial thing Ben might have done was miss 2 free throws in a row, which, let's be honest, was more of a nightly ritual. Even after his NBA stardom, Ben's humility never wavered. He didn't rush to Hollywood. He didn't jump into broadcasting to chase more cameras. Instead, he invested his time and money into growing the game at a grassroots level. He became a part owner of the Grand Rapids Drive, an NBA G League affiliate. That was his way of paying it forward. Mentoring young guys, teaching them the values that define his own career. Work harder than anyone else, don't worry about headlines, and understand that defense wins championships. And respect. Then in 2021, the journey came full circle in the most poetic way possible. Ben Wallace was inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. It was historic. He became the first undrafted player in NBA history to ever receive that honor. Think about that for a second. He went from tiny Whitehall, Alabama, a town so small it probably didn't even have a fast food chain, to Cuyahoga Community College, to Little Virginia Union, to going undrafted on draft night while guys like Kobe and Iverson were being celebrated, to standing on a stage in Springfield, Massachusetts, holding a Hall of Fame jacket that no one on this planet could ever take away. No one in the game's entire history had done it before, and chances are, we might never see it again. Ben Wallace's story isn't just about basketball. It's about resilience. It's about rewriting the rules of what greatness looks like. And most importantly, it's proof that sometimes the biggest giants of the game are also the quietest ones off the court. Humble, grounded, and happy just to be home with their family. Ben Wallace changed the way people looked at the game. He proved that defense is a superstar skill, a Hall of Famer type skill. Before Ben, people thought of defensive stoppers as sidekicks. After Ben, teams started hunting for guys who could anchor a defense without scoring a lick. He showed that you don't need to put up 30 points to dominate. That grabbing 18 rebounds, blocking 5 shots, and scaring every dude who even thought about driving to the hoop was just as valuable. When fans talk about that 2004 Pistons team, they don't say, "Man, remember that game Tayshaun Prince dropped 40? No, they say, "Remember when Ben Wallace locked up Shaq for 5 games? That's his legacy. That's greatness." So next time you're watching an NBA game and see someone drop 50 points, remember, there was once a man who could barely score 5, and he still ended up in the Hall of Fame. Because sometimes it's not about how many buckets you get. It's about how many buckets you stop. This was a story of Ben Wallace, the NBA legend who never shot the ball and still changed the game. Who in today's NBA do you think has the same qualities as this Hall of Famer? Let us know in the comments below.